Yemen is the most difficult place in the world to be a child. Incredulously, it's getting worse.
Ending a war is a choice. We are witness. Violence, insecurity, fear.
Their lives have just kept getting worse.
Yemeni men, women and children are suffering every day because people with power have missed the opportunities presented to them to make the necessary concessions to end the war.
According to the UN, more than 2 million babies and children are starving in Yemen. The internationally recognized government in Aden and the Houthi government in Sana'a have been unable to quell the crisis. Since the Saudi-led coalition intervened in 2015 to defeat the Houthi rebels, Yemen has been ravaged by war. Abdul Momen is one of the lucky children who survived severe malnutrition. He's just a year old, and his family has been displaced multiple times because of the fighting. They are now living in a tent in the city of Marib.
أصيب الطفل في رمضان كانت مع الصيام أصيب هو وكثير من الأطفال. هو كان مرض منتشر. حاولنا أن نوفر له الحليب، حاولنا أن ترضى أمه، ولكن وصل إلى مرحلة لم يستجيب من ذلك بشيء. حاولنا اسعفناه إلى صيدليات وإلى مستشفى وإلى المرفق الصحي هذا، فقالوا مصاب بحالة سوء تغذية، حالة حادة ولا يمكن معالجتها إلا في المستشفى الهائل، مستشفى الأمومة والطفولة. ثم تم تصديره إلى المستشفى، إلى القسم الخاص بالأطفال، ثم تلقى العلاجات اللازمة وتحسنت حالته ولله الحمد كما ترونه الآن على الحالة الذي هو عليها.
The World Food Programme and other aid organizations estimate that up to 500,000 children in Yemen will die this year if they do not get urgent medical treatment and food. And 20 million people there are food insecure. The population remains in a deep crisis, including this family.
لم يكن الغذاء اللازم، وإنما هناك الغذاء الضروري فقط. لا توجد مثل الأشياء مثل اللحمة والفواكه والخضروات الذي هي المصدر الأساسي للتغذية للأطفال وكذلك للأسرة.
Dr. Saleh Al-Haddad treated Abdul Momen at Hayal Maternity and Childhood Hospital in Marib. He says he's struggling to save many more children, but that the hospital has limited capacity.
الأسباب التي أدت إلى حدوث سوء التغذية لدى عبد المؤمن حالة النزوح، حدث نزوح لهذه الأسرة من محافظة عمران ونزح إلى محافظة مارب، ومن ثم حدث له سوء التغذية، حدثت له مضاعفات بسبب تغير الجو وسوء المعيشة والحرب، ونعلم أنهم يسكنوا في خيام، وفي هذا ما أدى إلى حدوث سوء التغذية لدى هذا الطفل. الإسهال بشكل مستمر، عدم معالجة الطفل بشكل سريع تؤدي إلى مضاعفات بحيث أنه يدخل في جفاف ويتحول منها إلى حالة سوء تغذية، وتتطور حالة سوء التغذية إلى أن تصبح مثل ما ذكرنا سابقا أمور في الدماغ تخلف عقليا وعمى بعض الأحيان وتسلخات في الجلد والحالات كثيرة
The provincial health director of Marib, Dr. Abdulaziz Shadadi, is part of the Aden government. He blames the Houthis for worsening Yemen's problem with malnutrition.
بلا شك أنه تتعاظم المشكلة وحجم المشكلة في سوء التغذية، وهذا نتيجة الحرب ونتيجة تعنت ميليشيات الحوثي وعدم سماحها للوصول المساعدات لجميع المناطق الجمهورية واستهدافها للطواقم الطبية وإعاقتها للتنمية بشكل عام أو التدخل الصحي، وإعاقتها كذلك مرتبات الموظفين، وإعاقتها كمان لأنشطة وزارة الصحة التي تعمل على التي تعمل على إيصال جميع الخدمات لجميع المحافظات سواء المحررة أو غير المحررة.
Most families rely on charity for food. The Red Cross says about 5 million people in Yemen are on the verge of famine this year, and more than 3 million women and children are acutely malnourished. The situation of women is critical as they tend to get less to eat than the rest of the family. This is why nursing mothers cannot feed their own babies properly. In many families, women are raising children alone because the conflict has forced them out of their homes, and many men have been lost in the war. Daily life is very expensive, and opportunities to find work are minimal, especially for women. But many humanitarian organizations have stopped sending food aid as they do not have sufficient funds from donors. The Red Cross says only 50% of the overall funding goals were pledged by the donors for Yemen this year at a global conference.
يقضي حياتي والله حياة صعبة جدا صراحة، ما حد يقدر يحكيها.
After 6 years of war and tremendous economic deterioration, lack of money, lack of resources, I'm standing here in this hospital room where this child literally is on the verge of death because they don't have food. They don't have the equipment medically and otherwise to take care. And so we got millions of children whose lives are at risk. In fact, about 400,000 children are on the risk of dying right now. We need this war to end, and we need support financially, food, nutrition, medical supplies, and we need it now. And it's a horrible situation. It's a disgrace on humanity what's happening here.
Although food aid is crucial, it is often not enough for at least one balanced meal per day, especially for large families. The Saudi-led coalition has also made life more difficult in Yemen. Before the war, up to 80% of food was imported, mostly with the support of Saudi Arabia. The blockade started with the Saudi intervention in 2015. It has caused a fuel shortage, all but destroyed social infrastructure, and caused the economy to crash. The Saudi regime has upheld the blockade by claiming it prevents arms from being smuggled to the Houthis. But it's the people of Yemen who are paying the price. And that has meant bad news for Yemen's lush forests. Without gas or fuel, many people have been cutting down trees to make fire. Environmental officials say some 5 million trees have been cut down across the north of Yemen in just the last 3 years. Getting water is another challenge. In Yemen, only 30% of the population has access to an indoor water supply, and even they often have to buy extra water for daily use. But most Yemenis use water that is pumped from the ground. Without fuel, most water pumping stations have halted operations and people have to buy water.
والله نحن بحاجة إلى الماء وإحنا في حارة الألبان والوايتات يعني غالية ما نقدرش نعبي كل أسبوع ولا كل نص شهر يعني إذا عبينا بالشهر مرة.
And the Yemeni economy is in a free fall. The Aden government has accused the Houthis of squandering $4 billion on the war. But the Houthis say that was used to import food and medication. Those buying food from the market get only a fraction of the value for their money. Everything costs more for less. There are fewer customers at grocery stores each day. Security guard Riyad Qasim is struggling to feed his family in Aden.
الدفعات والوضع زفت واقع على الشهر كريم شهر العيد والغلاء مرتفع والعملة الآن غير السعودي ب 255. يعني الان العملاء ما فيش رواتب، كمان الرواتب مش موجوده، تجي لك بعد 3 شهور. الان الكبش اللي يشتري كبش قيمته 100,000.
Whether it's considered a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran or a sectarian conflict, the war in Yemen has caused a major humanitarian crisis, especially for children. With proper international intervention, many lives could likely be saved. Though there seems to be no sense of urgency to address the crisis, timely and adequate food supply is all it takes to save people from famine and gives hope of a future to the starving children. While a political solution can be worked out over time, lifting the blockade on food, fuel, and medication imports, making contested areas accessible for humanitarian aid, and providing sufficient funds to aid operations is the only way forward in Yemen.